Welcome to the You Are Loved Ministry podcast with Pam and me, Brenda Porch. Now, today we're going to be talking about an innocent man who suffered a lot, and yet he still remained faithful. Now, we all suffer different kinds of trials and problems, and we go through hard times, but we don't always understand why God is allowing these things to happen in our life. And honestly, we can get upset with him for that. Now, the Bible doesn't answer all of our questions, but it does address all of our needs. And one of the most important ways it helps us is by sharing the story of Job, because we can look at his story and maybe put ourselves in places and at times. We read about him in the book of James, chapter 5, verse 11. Indeed, we count them blessed who endured. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. So when I go through the story of Job, compassionate and merciful are not the two things that come to my mind right away, but we're going to look at it together. So let's look at Job and what happened and how he persevered. So what do you think of when you look at this story? Does God's compassion and mercy come to mind?
Actually, when you get all the way through it, yeah, it does.
Yeah,
But
but not at the
it takes a
beginning.
while. At the
Yeah.
beginning, it just seems really mean. I've always been amazed that the Bible offers so much detail in every book, places, people, and time and events that can be checked in so many ways. But I always thought of Job being an exception to that. There didn't seem to be many details to me. But some scholars claim it was just a fable rather than a historic event. But looking at it more closely, there are a lot of details that wouldn't be part of a fable. So we're going to see places and nations mentioned that can be found on maps and in history books, and details about Job's life and habits that show that he lived in the time of the patriarchs, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob.
So you're leaning towards this
Oh,
actually did happen, that it's not a fable.
I think it's very clearly isn't because it is so detailed.
Okay. Well, I too have always been amazed by this story. Um, I don't know. In some ways, the test between Satan and God, this conversation that they have, it, it seems a little odd to me. After all, God didn't have anything to prove. He created the heavens and the earth, and Satan was one of the fallen angels, and I don't know, that whole part of it kind of messes with my very logical, very human brain. But I just have to wonder why God would even compete in this situation. I don't know. Maybe we'll never
Mhm.
know. What do you think?
You said one thing about how God doesn't have anything to prove, but think about what people say these days. Everybody expects him to prove himself to them.
Mm,
Every time you turn around, there's someone demanding, well, if God was really a God or a good guy, he would do this or he would do that, meaning he would do what I want. But those kind of conversations happen all the time,
true.
demanding that God fit some sort of standard these humans that he made have set for him.
Well, I get, as always, you made me think about it in a different way, which is good. So we're just going to get, ladies, I can tell you that there's like, what, 42 books in this chapter and this 42 chapters in this book. So we're not going to be able to read every single one, but we're going to read enough that you can get the whole story. And this won't be the only time we talk about it. But let's start with Job chapter 1. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, and one who feared God and shunned evil. And 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. Also, his possessions were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camel, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. And his sons would go and feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. So it was, when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Thus Job did regularly. Now, this part makes sense to me. Job was upright. He had a close family. He was involved with everything he needed to do for God. He was even taking some extra precautions because you know how those kids are. Got 10 kids, there's a chance that somebody is not doing something they should do. So he's gonna make sacrifices for his sons, just in case.
Well, things were going well for him, and it seems he deserved the blessings he enjoyed. But cue the sinister music. The villain of the story is about to appear. Okay, let's see Job 1, 6 to 12. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You've blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power, only do not lay a hand on his person." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord.
Oh dear. So basically, what I'm hearing Satan say is, well, of course he puts you first and he loves you. You've protected him, you've given him all this stuff. He doesn't have any problems. Why wouldn't he do that? And God said, all right, you can do with his stuff, but don't touch him. Now, I got to say, of all of that, that makes sense to me. But the part that scares me the most is what Satan said he's been doing. God's like, so what have you been up to? What have you been doing? And Satan's like, just walking around on the earth, going back and forth and back and forth. And we know from other scriptures, he's looking for those to devour. That one scares me. It gives me no comfort at all. I would like to say that Satan was completely wrong, that Job was only faithful because of all of the good things that he has done. But I don't know. I find it easier personally to praise God and live right and all that when things are going well. But when the suffering comes, then I do sometimes question. And I don't know. Sometimes suffering will push you away, but sometimes it draws you closer. I really think that's a true heart test. What do you think?
Well, it is, and that's what we're going to kind of see today, I think, that there is a reason for some tests. In this case, it was to make a point, but I also, when we get done with Job, I'm always wind up with the same feeling that maybe Job made this mistake one day. Maybe he told God that he would be willing to be used in any way God needed to use him. And God said, "Okay, I'll use you to tell people about grief, about pain, and about me." Because that's what we're going to learn about in Job. Anyway, every individual is different. God made us that way, with the ability to choose what we'll do with each blessing and with each trial. We'll see what Job does.
Hey, now you're scaring me again. Because
Kind of like
we
doing that.
all at some point said, here am I, Lord, send me.
Yep.
Just whatever, however you want to use me, Lord, just
Got to
use.
be careful.
Yeah, I heard a long time ago you shouldn't pray for patience because God gives you trial to learn patience. So I don't normally pray for patience, but I have prayed just however you want to use me, Lord. And hey, yeah, I hope I don't. Oh, well, I guess if I do, I need to be as brave as the early Christians and go to the lions or whatever it takes to prove your commitment to the Lord.
Well, I once prayed for patience. I didn't do it ever again, but I did. And things that happened in the year following that prayer. I had done it at a retreat in the woods by myself. And the next year I found the same spot and said, "Okay, we're going to revise that statement." Have a different set of
Can I
parameters here.
take that back, Lord, please? I didn't really mean it
I didn't know
exactly.
you were going to do that.
It's true. All right, let's keep going. Job 1:13 through 19. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them. And when the Sabeans raided them and took them away, and indeed they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Yikes. So now all of his cattle, all of his flocks are gone, and all of his servants gone, save one. While he was still speaking, another also came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Yikes. While he was still speaking, another come and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels and took them away, and yes, killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. And 18 says, while he was still speaking, another one came and said, I think I'd be like, nope, stop.
You didn't go away. Yeah.
That's all I want to hear. But that's not what happened. Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking while their oldest wine in their oldest brother's house. And suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they are dead. And I alone have escaped to tell you. Wow. Wow. In one day, all of that happened back to back to back. He's lost his servants. He's lost his animals. He's lost his children.
He must have had a hard time catching his breath. Things in that kind of get to me too, that God said, don't touch him, touch what he has. I would not have thought at that moment he would think about the children. I would still be thinking things and not persons. But all these persons are dead. And when what you just read talked about the fire from God coming down to get the place. We know the story. It wasn't God. It was
Right.
Satan setting that fire.
Right.
But 2 things about that is, one is we assume that every bad thing that happens came from God or by his choice. And the other is Satan has a lot of the same powers. And we need to be aware that he has the power to deceive, that he'll use to accomplish things, but he has powers to do a lot of bad things that we blame God for. So we have, before we start saying, God, why did you make this happen or let this happen? We need to back up and say, okay, might have been him, might have been the enemy.
Well, and scripture tells us that Satan has the ability to appear as an angel of light.
He can do
And
a lot.
so he can even look like the good guy. But
Look at he promised Jesus, and when he was tempting him, those things were pretty big things to promise. But he could. Okay, well, he wants to win a point, though. He hits hard.
Yes.
His whole goal is to draw people away from God, and he'll work hardest to get those who are most devoted to God. Job was faithful, and Satan wanted him to turn against God, so he hit him from every side, all in one day. His wealth and family gone, and that kind of grief and loss would destroy some people's faith. Let's see what Job did in verses 20 to 22. Then Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And in all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong.
It just, we established at the beginning that this is a true story. This really happened to somebody, a man named Job. What faith would it take to literally have everything taken away from you, except his wife? All his family, his kids are gone, his cattle is gone, his servants are gone, and yet he's still praising God. That's just amazing. It's amazing.
Well, so far, it's God and Job 1, Satan 0. But the villain has another dirty trick to play.
Yeah.
Satan and God meet again, and this is what happens. Job 3, 3 to 8. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. So Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has he will give for his life, but stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, Behold, he's in your hand, but spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Now, if I were Job at this point, I'd be thinking, I can't catch a break.
Yeah.
And I might be struggling to hang on to my faith. Okay, sackcloth was made out of coarse goat's hair, and it was very uncomfortable texture to have on your skin.
Mm.
Ashes were a sign of desolation and ruin. Sackcloth and ashes were a way to demonstrate either intense grief or sincere repentance.
I think we've all seen a time in our lives when we feel like we've hit rock bottom. Everything's going on. Maybe it's our health. Maybe it's our family relationship or the death of a loved one, or we've lost our job. We have a financial loss. And when all this happens, we can get depressed. And we might even think that God doesn't love us or hear our prayers. And I think for me, some of this is that I feel things are mine. This is my house, my children, my husband, my body, my money, whatever you want to put there, my. And they're not. Everything belongs to God. Even the very body that I'm in and the way it works it all belongs to God. And so I feel for Job. I really do, because he's lost everything. We'll see in a few minutes. He still has a few friends and he has a wife. But well, that might have been part of Satan's curse, is like, I'm leaving the little woman behind because I know how she can be.
You're so
Uh,
bad.
well, yeah, we read. Okay. But she's going to get hers, and I'll talk about that eventually. So the word fair comes to mind, and we start thinking, that's not fair. It's not fair, Lord. I've done everything, and I've been guilty of this. Okay, God, what did I do wrong? Just tell me what I did wrong, and I'll do better. I promise I'll do better. Or, God, that's not fair. I've done everything right, and yet you're messing with my stuff. You're messing with my people. But it's not really ours, is it?
No, and we are children, much more than we'd like to admit. And we do tend to have huge pity parties when we don't get what we think we deserve. But you want to read about somebody else. You want to get to this, don't you? The lady. You go for it.
But I mean, I do sometimes have pity parties, but I try real hard not to stay there long because I'm blessed. I'm blessed. All right. Now, we talked about how he lost everything. He lost his children. He lost his animals. He lost his servants. Now he's lost his health. And he's sitting there scraping boils, which I've never had a boil, but I hear they are
What?
horribly uh, uncomfortable.
You never had one of those little whiteheads. Really?
I've had pimples, but I mean, to me, I thought a boil was larger, like maybe pus filled or clear liquid filled, and it would be tender around
It
the
is.
area,
It is, but some pimples are like that.
and
But
it would
that's what it
itch.
is.
See, in my mind, I didn't picture him with a bunch of little whiteheads. I went to high school with a boy that, bless his heart, he didn't have pore on his face. It wasn't either a blackhead or a whitehead. But I picture maybe, I mean, more
Well,
about this
there
stuff than I
there
do,
makes
but I
sense.
picture something larger and more painful.
I just picture the idea of all over every inch of you. If it's on one spot, it just drives you crazy if anything touches it. But all over
Yeah, I mean, you
everything.
can't sit, you can't stand. Uh, Measles or chicken pox
Yeah.
would be kind of up that line where
Times
you
10.
keep the kids from not scratching. So yeah, not fun. All right, let's get to the little wifey here, because she got left. He didn't lose her. He still has his wife. Let's read Job 2, 9 and 10. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. Now that's some good advice from a godly woman, right?
who's just been through the same horrors he went through.
She
She lost
not, she not sitting there scratching her sores.
she lost her 10 children.
She lost her children and she lost her house. Well, no, it was the son's
Well,
house.
lost the wealth. Yeah.
She lost the wealth. Yes.
Give a little bit of give her a little bit of room there, okay?
Okay.
That's not much.
To be honest, I don't know that I would have done any better.
I don't know who we can't know until we're in that situation, but losing all of your children to me for a mother, and then see your husband just sitting there suffering and can't do a thing about anything, can't even comfort you because he
Yeah.
can't hold you. I think she's give her a little bit of room. That's
Okay.
it's
All
yeah.
right. Yeah, I need to because the Bible tells me it whatever measure I hold against other people is a measure held against me. And I need all the grace I can get.
She also may have been sympathizing. She may have thought he'd be better off if he wasn't suffering anymore. So maybe she's saying it in a sense of, I don't want to see him suffer. We don't know either one of these ideas, which one's best, or whether she was really ugly or whether she was just suffering. I'm trying to be nice and give her a benefit of a doubt.
But there's an exclamation point at the end of the word die.
Yeah,
So she said it with passion,
yeah.
whatever passion that was.
My version still works.
Yes, it does.
We don't know which way she was saying this or why she was saying
That's true. Okay, fine. Burst my bubble.
it. I'm trying.
But he said to her, this is Job answering his wife, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Ouch.
Mm.
Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? And all this Job did not sin with his lips. That would have hit me square between the eyes. And when I read this story, it still hits me square between the eyes. And I do think about this. You know, you talked about God using Job to demonstrate grief and loss and all and suffering and all that. That's true. That's true. God is a loving, merciful God when we are going through good times, but he's also a loving and merciful God when we go through bad times. But, you know, as women, we want to fix things, or at least I do. And my husband is much more patient than I am. And so when something goes wrong, I want to know why. I want to make sure that never happens again. I want to, you know, what does it say? Kick butt and take names. The people that are in trouble did it. I want them punished. But like you said, sometimes I think we forget that she too was suffering. She was hurting. And I just can't imagine losing everything, you know, because I know when my kids left home, empty nester, it was terrible. I know people that have lost children and it still hurts, but they didn't lose all of it. Well, one of them did because it was the only child, but to lose 10 children all one day. So, okay, I do. You're right. I have to cut her some slack. I have to cut her some slack. Um, and I also have to wonder too, was she wondering in the back of her mind, did you do something, Job? Did you do something to cause God to have this kind of anger? And if that's the case, maybe if Joe were out of the way, then her life would get better. Like I said, we don't know. We're just guessing. But I do think about that comment that Job made to his wife quite often.
Job must have been feeling so alone. Lost his children and business, and even his own wife isn't available to share in his grief.
Hmm.
She's too angry and can't understand why he doesn't feel the same way she's feeling. It's got to be lonely.
Well, it is, and men do react differently. I mean, to every good thing and bad thing in life. They're wired differently. They're supposed to. Um, and so that's understandable. But Job's fate is just amazing. All right, let's keep the story going. Oh dear, here comes the friends.
Now we're in trouble.
Friends. Job 2, 11 and 13, 2 through 13. Now when Job's three friends heard of all his adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place. Eliphaz the Timonite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naaman. All right, you
Na-
guys say that. What is
Naaman,
it?
Naamathite. We're going to just sort of say these however we can get them out of our mouths. And just let anybody that knows better just enjoy knowing that we're wrong. It's okay.
All right, so they all came from different places. They heard what was going on. They came from different places, and because they have made an appointment together to come and mourn with him and to comfort him. And those are good friends. They've traveled to be with him during this difficult time. And when they raised their eyes from afar and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept. And each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head toward heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was great, very great.
Yeah.
I can't imagine women sitting for 7 days without saying anything.
I can't imagine men doing that either. It's just a
But
lot.
can't, just to sit there. And I've heard that sometimes that can be one of the best things you can do for someone that's grieving is just to physically be there. And they did that for a full 7 days, because they saw how much he was suffering. That's admirable. That's admirable.
Well, finally, there's someone there for Job. At least it seems that way.
Mhm,
These friends have traveled to mourn with him, but he looks so bad they barely know him.
mhm.
They're really sorry for him, and they join him in his sorrow. But are they going to help or hurt when they start talking to him? Because meaning well isn't always enough.
I think Job needs a cheering squad, and sometimes we think we have a bad day, but Job's bad day is kind of topped anything that I've ever had.
Mhm.
And we're going to be mean and stop the story right there. So you got to come back for part two. But I just want to say that, well, I'll say it now and then you have to come back and hear me say it again. A lot of times when we're going through tough times, the people around us do have an unknown expiration date to their sympathy.
Mm.
Some will be more sympathetic longer than others, but at some point, people want to go back to their lives. And that's one thing that I have seen with death. When someone close to you passes away, a child, a husband, a parent, there's a lot of attention up front and a lot of compassion up front. But as time goes by, that does change. And we're going to kind of see a little bit of that in the next part of the story. But for today, we're just going to move on to what can we learn. And and the first thing that I noticed was that God knows his children. And all through the story, God's certainty never waned when it came to Job. He knew that Job would not sin.
Mm.
And what would it be like for God to have that kind of faith in me? What a goal to strive for. That our faith is so strong that God knows that no matter what happens to us, we're going to remain faithful. Job did it. And so, will we be perfect? No. But we can make that a goal that no matter what happens, that we need to know. Let's try this again. No matter what happens, we keep our faith in God. And there have been times that there are people that think they're true faithful followers of the Lord, and then something bad happens and it does cause them to lose their faith. But I think Job reminds us that in both good times and bad, our faith in God is critical. And as I said, if Job did it, I want to make that a goal for me.
Yeah, we need to make that goal now before anything goes wrong because
Yes.
in the moment when it's all hitting us so hard, it would be really hard to pull your faith together and get your brain in the right gear. We always assume things are going to keep going all right because they're going okay today. So why shouldn't they go okay tomorrow? But if we look at what goes on in the world in the news, tornadoes taking away entire neighborhoods,
Mhm.
destroying everything someone had when they woke up that morning, and it's gone. Um, there are floods and there are earthquakes and there are so many things that can happen.
Mhm.
and can happen in big ways that take away a lot. And even faith, people of Russia in the early 1900s did not know that they would be living in a country that wouldn't tolerate God. They were a religious country at that point.
Mm.
They would never have guessed that there'd be a time when they would be afraid to say God's name because that was against the law and there was big punishments. So we have to be prepared for anything that anyone's ever suffered like that and think, what if it happened to me? Would I be able to turn to God first? Would I be able to keep my faith strong enough to hold his hand and endure?
The
And
phrase "no matter what" comes to my mind.
mhm,
No matter what, good times and in bad, no matter what, I
it's hard.
want to keep my faith in God. Yeah. There's an old saying that we predict the future based on the past.
Which
And
is
so if we're caught up in good times, we think good times are going to continue to roll. But
mhm,
I've also been guilty of the opposite where we're caught up in bad times and we think the bad times will never end.
true.
And I think it's during those times that brings about my second point, which is Satan uses hard times to entice us to harden our hearts. He puts that in there. Oh, God's forgotten you and you don't have anything or everybody else has more. And I think we need to be aware of that that's one of those areas where we can be very vulnerable to Satan's lies. Is that, oh, if God really loved you, he wouldn't let that happen. Well, this is life. People have the right to sin, and they do. It rains on the just and the unjust. Bad things do happen to good people. And sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's God giving us a chance, like he did for Job, to prove our faith, to strengthen our faith. I don't know about you, Pam, but every time I go through a storm and I come out on the other side with my faith intact, it actually becomes stronger.
Yeah, it does. Jan, you used a word at the beginning of this one that I hadn't thought about before, the word entice. Now,
Mhm.
usually we think of entice as being something that draws us towards something pleasant or enjoyable or whatever, but he enticed Job in a different way.
Mhm.
But that's what I think about that too, that when we're really hurting, one of the emotions that comes along really quick and becomes partner to the hurt is anger.
Yes.
And anger tends to make us feel a false sense of power. When you really get angry at something, you feel stronger because
Mm.
you're being fueled by that hate. So if we're being enticed to harden our hearts and to get good and mad at God or deep into poor me or whatever the thing is he's enticing us toward, that's something we have to be aware of now too, that that could happen, that we could be drawn into those kinds of reactions that would be more destructive than whatever it was that hit us in the first place.
It's true. That's true. And Satan is very tricky. He knows exactly where to hit us and exactly when. He does not play fair and
Right.
he will kick you hard when you're down. And so
Yes.
that goes back to what you said earlier about we need to make those decisions to be faithful before the bad times start to roll.
Mm.
And the third thing that I noticed out of this, that I've got out of this so far, this study, is that families have a strong influence on one another. The closer you are to someone, the more your influence, your words, your advice, your example is going to be for that person. And so if you surround yourself with like-minded, strong Christians, they can be such a blessing at a time when things are falling apart. They can remind you of God's love. They can bring to you scriptures. They can pray with you. They can show the love of God through acts of kindness and service. But if you allow yourself to be surrounded by people that have weak faith and they or have no faith at all, then the first time things start going bad, they're going to encourage you, as Job's wife did. They're going to say, curse God and die. And so we need to be careful. Um, I just think that we need to be careful about who we choose our friends. Scripture talks about you can know a man by his friends.
Mm.
And that's true. And I just think that we need to we need to make sure that we look at our, and I'm not saying you should be friends with everybody. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying those inner circle people, the ones that you allow to be closest to you, make sure you have at least one or two in that group that has a very strong faith and that will help you when times are bad, because we need each other. And it may be that that person needs to come in and help us, and then maybe that person needs to say, you know what, you got yourself in this mess, you got to get yourself out. Tough love's the real thing. But regardless, we need people in our lives who put God first.
True.
And I'm thankful. I've got several, present company included, that I think would help me, because you know what you said about anger. You're right. We get angry, and when we get angry, I'm full of old sayings today. I don't know where this came from, but you know, the old saying of I heard a long time ago, a saying, he who angers you controls you.
Mm-hmm.
And I am such a type A control freak. I thought, okay, fine. I'm not getting angry then, because I don't want somebody else to control me. I want to control myself. Of course, that's not completely possible as much as I would like for it to be, but it's true. When we get really mad, and when we get hurt, we get really mad, we can say and do things that we are ashamed of later. So we need those people that will stand by us. And right now, Job's got 3 people sitting with him. Oh, well, he's got the
But we've
wife.
got 4 friends. 4
Oh,
friends.
there's 4? I read the names. I didn't even catch that. All right. He's got 4 friends, ladies. I knew that. It was just testing Pam.
Yeah. Uh-huh. You want to try to be honest?
Let's see. Do I want a skylight right about there? Struck by lightning. But 4 friends. Okay. He's got people there who are right now helping him, but that's going to change. So if you want to know the next part of this story, you got to come back, because we've got a lot we can learn from Job. A lot. All right, my friend, did you have anything else that you wanted to say before we sign off?
No, we're getting into the meat of it next time.
And then even more the next time. So y'all come back and join us. We're glad that you joined us for the You Are Loved Ministry podcast with Pam Baggett and Brenda Porch. And we hope you have a blessed day.